And now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you our commencement speaker for this morning's ceremony, Mr. Tom Fanning. Mr. Fanning is Chairman and President, Chief Executive Officer of Southern Company, and one of America's largest producers of electricity. I'd ask Dr. Raphael Bras, Provost, and Mr. Fanning to please come forward at this time. Georgia Tech has enjoyed a long and productive relationship with the Southern Company and its predecessor, dating back almost a century. Southern Company, with Georgia Tech, partners in research. They hire co-op students and graduates and provide scholarships and support us in many other ways. Mr. Tom Fanning became president of Southern Company in 2010 and assumed the additional responsibilities of CEO and chairman in December of that year. Tom is a seasoned Southern Company employee, having worked with the company for more than 30 years, holding 15 different positions in 8 different business units, including numerous officer positions with a variety of Southern Company subsidiaries in the area of finance, strategy, international business, development, and technology. Most recently, he served as Chief Operating Officer, where he was responsible for Southern Company's generation and transmission, engineering and construction services, and environmental affairs, system planning, and the company's competitive generation business units. Tom earned his bachelor's and master's degrees in industrial management from Georgia Tech in 1979 and 1980, respectively. He's continued to invest in Georgia Tech, serving on the Board of Trustees for the Georgia Tech Foundation and the advisory board for the Ernest Scheller Jr. College of Business. Most recently, in January, he was interviewed as part of Georgia Tech's Business Network, speaking on energy and sharing leadership insights with Georgia Tech students. Tom and his wife Beverly and family who are here are the parents of 2 sons, Matt and Brad. We're proud of his accomplishments and grateful for his ongoing engagement with Georgia Tech. In addition to serving as our commencement speaker, Mr. Fanning this morning will receive the most significant honor that Georgia Tech or any university can bestow on an individual. He will become the 24th person to receive the Honorary Doctor of Philosophy degree in Georgia Tech's 128-year history. Other notable honorary degree recipients include President Jimmy Carter, Atlanta Mayor Ivan Allen Jr., astronaut John Young, oil exec Pete Silas, and Senator Sam Nunn. Provost Bras, will you please hood Mr. Fanning? Allow me to read the citation. The President and faculty of the Georgia Institute of Technology, to all whom these presents may come, greetings. Whereas Thomas A. Fanning has for 3 decades played a pivotal role in addressing the daunting challenges of energy production and distribution in an era of diminishing resources and increasing environmental concerns, served as an exceptional leader and mentor within the Southern Company, one of the nation's largest producers of electricity and a vital component of the Southeast's economy, and is recognized throughout the energy industry as a business leader who gives generously of his time and resources to his community and the next generation of leaders. Now, therefore, we do hereby confer the degree Honorary Doctor of Philosophy with all the rights, privileges, and honors thereunto appertaining. In witness whereof, the signatures of the Chancellor of the University System of Georgia and the President and the Registrar of the Georgia Institute of Technology are hereto subscribed, and the seal of the Institute is affixed. Presented in Atlanta on the 4th day of May, 2013. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tom Fanning.
President Peterson, faculty and staff, graduates, family, friends, and loved ones, it is truly an honor to be here. My family's here. My 92-year-old mother is here, and my dad passed away about 17 years ago. I can only imagine what he's saying right now. It'd be something like, "Son, do those people really know what they're doing here at Georgia Tech?" But I am beyond humbled and honored. Look, in starting here, I just am reminded of Gary Trudeau. I always love reading his stuff. He's a famous cartoonist, and he once said about commencement addresses that commencement speeches were largely invented with the belief that recent college graduates should not be unleashed on an unsuspecting public without being properly sedated. So I can assure you I'll try not to accomplish that this morning. It is such an honor. This place is like home. I did get 2 degrees here, undergrad and graduate school. My son Matt, here in attendance, just graduated a year ago. Great having him here. And as proof, in fact, that in life miracles truly do exist, my older brother John actually graduated from here. You know, much seems so familiar from the time I was here to the time Matt graduated to the time you all are here. You know, to this day I still have a definite lingering aversion to anything from Athens, Georgia. And in fact, if any of you ever notice that sometimes we fail to restore the power as soon as we should in that part of the state, well, now you know why. But I know how hard you all have worked. I know the countless mornings and evenings and papers and presentations. I know how hard it is. That's why it's such a valuable degree. Let me be among the first to say, ladies and gentlemen of Georgia Tech, you did it. Congratulations. So I want to keep this simple, but I want to start with a simple but profound question. I'm going to conclude with that same question. And I want you to remember this as you leave here today. The question is, who are you? Who are you? Imagine where you were some 4 to 6 years ago when you first stepped on these grounds. And imagine where you'll be in a year, and 5 years, and 10 years. And my sense is you're going to be surprised. Life has this divinely curious habit, I think, of introducing the unexpected into our expectations. When I think about talking to people at Southern Company, about where they stand in the company and in life, I always kind of divide the conversation really into 2 segments. The first are the whats, and the second are the hows. Now, the whats are really pretty simple. In my business, it's make, move, and sell electricity. It's the things you do. It's like your prerequisite, I guess. It gets you in the tent. And what's fascinating to you all is, congratulations, you're graduating, but in my view, you've just finished the first 100 level of coursework in life. And so now the exciting part comes. The hows, however, are more powerful and arguably way more important than your whats. What you think about and learn and how you incorporate it into life, I think helps determine who you are. I've been awfully lucky in my career. I really pay attention to these hows. I talk about them all the time with folks. Let me offer to you 5 of them briefly, and I hope they'll be helpful to you. The first how is to respect one another. Don't just talk about respect, demonstrate it. It's not a noun, it's a verb, and it should be constantly in action. What we try to say is we don't work for each other, we work with each other. And in life, you must work for your families, for your communities, for your church. These are commitments that you make. It is your responsibility to fulfill them in everything you do. No matter your talents, if the only person you ever depend on is yourself, if the only person you believe in or invest in is yourself, then I'm worried you'll be setting yourself up for a lifetime of failure and perhaps unhappiness. That is, of course, unless your name is Donald Trump. Secondly, the second how, be here now. Life is short. Even as I'm speaking to you now, I'm always reminded as to the short attention span that we have as human beings. I bet even the short time I've been up here, some of you are already Facebooking and Twittering. And if you are, be kind to your commencement speaker. But I want you to know that what's happening here in front of you right now matters. Not just here today, but always, everywhere. Invest yourselves fully in the moment. We always have to remind ourselves, particularly in personal relationships, to focus on the present. Be there when people need us to listen. Be willing to move when people need us to act. Be attentive. Be here now. The third how is to be responsible. Now, I always cut responsibility up into three pieces. The first is take responsibility for yourself. Now, that sounds obvious, but being frail human beings, we have those days where we have valleys and not peaks. We have ebbs and not flows. I have them too. Some days I get up in the morning and I just say, I'd rather not go to work today. Those guys are so stupid. I'd rather go play golf. Look, what we've got to do is to recognize that not all of us can be on top of our game. We must individually commit to get that fire going in our bellies, to make today better than yesterday and tomorrow better than today. See, the issue is that truly successful people aren't successful because they never get down. It's that they never stay down. They get up. They never quit. The second level of responsibility is taking responsibility for your teammates. Any group of people that have a common goal is really your team. And good teammates take ownership of the entire team. They inspire others, and I want you to use that word in life. They inspire others to do great things. Whether it's in your office, in your home, or in your community, make yourselves accountable for making everyone around you better. Anything that is greater than yourself, more important, is your team, and that's what we've got to do. The third level of responsibility is take responsibility for the mission. It's bigger than self, bigger than team. It is not kind of your department in work. It's the company. It's not your company. It's the industry. It's not the industry. It's the greater well-being of America. It's not you and your family. It's your community. It's your church. This is a quality that I look for in people, and I think it distinguishes true leaders. I think it's almost always demonstrated by self-sacrifice. Serving an interest greater than yourself is the highest and best form of service you can offer. And it is both the single best way to show and earn respect. One of the things we love to say at Southern is be bigger than your own bottom line. The fourth how is don't make excuses. So we talked about challenges. The speaker before me talked about having these challenges. Look, when you overcome challenges, it gives you a great sense of accomplishment. It's a great thing. And sometimes the challenges get the best of you, and I know that's disappointing. But when you allow a failed challenge to become an excuse, you subvert your ability to achieve even greater things. Once you become a person who substitutes excuses for results, that just forever limits how far you can go. It could become a part of your character, and instead of becoming an aberration, it could become your default setting. You can learn from a failure, but you can never learn from an excuse. On my desk, if anybody ever came to visit, you would see these cards. And those of us at Georgia Tech love equations and formulas, and this is a business card I give to people. And the formula basically says, no results plus excuses does not equal results. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, the final how, is lead a balanced life. Now, many years ago, there was this show called the Ed Sullivan Show. You guys remember television shows, right? It's like YouTube, only bigger. So Ed Sullivan, you may remember him. If you've ever looked at these grainy black and white videos of the Beatles when they first came to America, that was likely the Ed Sullivan Show. He had these big acts, and he was really famous, but he also had these little acts that he had on regularly. He had this one guy that was a regular visitor, and he would take these canes and turn them upside down, and he'd put plates on top of them and spin the plates. And he'd get one going, he'd go to two, and then 4 and then 6, and it was always fun to see how many he could go. And this guy would run around spinning the plates on the canes, and of course, as one would start to wobble, he'd go back to that. And in essence, he was always paying attention to the one that was kind of most out of whack. And what's interesting about that is at some point in your lives, the question will become, how many plates can you keep spinning at one time? How many different parts of your life, both professional and personal, can you keep in balance? And perhaps most importantly, when one of those plates comes crashing down unexpectedly, what will you do about that? I have my own personal story. I guess I was married to Beverly, my wife. She's here. We were married 4.5 years. My son Matt is here. I guess he was 2.5 years old. My youngest son Brad was 6 months old. I was CFO of the international company, head of projects, and head of corporate finance for Southern, and we hit a deal in Melbourne, Australia. And it's an acquisition, and those things are like 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. From a business standpoint, it's great, man. You get up in the morning, you run out of your cave, you go in the jungle, you go kill something, you drag it back, and you eat it. And then you get up the next day and you do it again. From a business standpoint, that is great work. But I can tell you from a personal standpoint, it's one of the worst times of my life. Bev and I decided, since her network, her support network, and the boys were so young, we decided that she should stay there with Matt and Brad in Atlanta while I was off in Australia. And I can tell you, with the pace of change and the commitment work, I just worked myself to death. And I remember coming home. I guess I was there almost 9 to 12 months total lapse time. In one segment, I was there 6 months, only came home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And when I came home for Christmas, I had run myself into the ground. I had pneumonia. They checked me right into the hospital. I saw my kids 1 hour Christmas that year. And sure enough, as soon as I get released from the hospital, I jump right back on a plane and run back to Melbourne, Australia. During this time, Brad had turned 1 year old. And I used to call home in the mornings in Australia when Bev and the kids were getting ready. She was getting ready to put those kids to bed. And, it was in the evening. And so she put the kids on the phone. Now, Brad was 1, and he couldn't really talk, but he made these delightful burbling sounds, and he was always a great kid to talk to. And then Bev would put Matt on the phone. He could talk. He was just about to turn 3. But one of the things that happened here sticks with me to this day. I was talking to Brad, and he was burbling, and I heard this noise in the background, this big commotion. And I got to tell you, I'm going to embarrass Matt a little bit. But even when he was a little guy, he was my guy. I can remember when he was just little, cutting the grass in the front yard. He'd have his little red lawnmower right behind me. He'd always run around the house doing chores with me. We'd watch the Braves games. He had no idea what was going on in the Braves, but he could tell when I was happy and when I was aghast at what they were doing at that time. He was right there with me. And when Bev put Matt on the phone, he was beside himself crying. See, Bev's always been a great mother, and she was throwing a great 3-year-old birthday party for him. He was having a magician there, and all his buddies were going to be there. And he could not understand, Dad, why you're not going to be there for me. And I felt terrible. I hung up the phone. I felt horrible. I can feel it now, I swear. I think that pain never leaves a parent. And I think the question I had to ask myself is, who was I? Was I who I wanted to be? Was I who my family needed me to be? And so I made that commitment. I came back from Australia eventually and made a commitment to be involved in my family's lives. We've moved around, Bud mentioned, a lot of times in the Southeast. I've always been able to keep my family together. I've always been able to invest, to pick my spots, to be involved in their lives, to whether it's coaching at the Northside Youth Organization, Chastain Park, or Riverwood High School, or whatever it was, I made that commitment personally. So I think what I want to leave you with on that how is this notion. Graduates, anybody that can tell you that you will have it all is lying. Rather than having it all or trying to and not having anything to show for it at the end, well, I implore you, focus on the essential. There is no such thing as perfect balance in your lives. We've all got to make choices. The key is in recognizing that it is you who make those choices, and it is you who set your priorities. You and no one else really decides what matters in life. And so in closing, I want to talk about a final notion. Talked about what's, talked about how's a lot. I want to finish with the whys. And it's really kind of this notion of lasting importance. What will your legacy be? I talked to my boys about it. I talked to folks at Southern about it. When we think about legacy, we normally talk about our lasting impression as we're looking back on something. And what I ask you to do is consider your legacy as you're beginning something. How much better off would we be if we adopted that mindset right now? So, who are you? Make your impact about more than just your career. Make it about your life. Be here, now, and always. It's been such an honor to be with you here this morning. Congratulations to you all.